I will now call the meeting to order. Thank you and good morning. The Right Honorable Dr. Tulia Ackson, Speaker of the National Assembly of Tanzania, our host, distinguished honorable speakers and heads of delegation from member parliaments of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, honorable members of parliament from SADC Parliamentary Forum, Ms. Buemo Segoma, SADC Parliamentary Forum Secretary General, Ms. Nenwela Mwahambi, Clerk of the National Assembly of Tanzania, Clerks and Secretaries General of SADC Parliamentary Forum member parliaments, staff of SADC Parliamentary Secretariat and member parliaments, and all invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. And it is my pleasure to begin this session. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with immense pleasure and honor that I appear with respect to agriculture and food insecurity and youth employment. In particular, the recent years have been years of high inflation, and since several food products in Africa are imported, the cost of living has escalated for most households, while the revenue of citizens has remained the same. This has created disbalances in food availability, especially in remote locations where the cost of transportation is high and where merchants no longer find it viable to freight products and food items. On the other hand, Southern Africa is a region rich with fertile soil and natural resources. Africa itself is a continent with the highest percentage of unused arable land in the world, thus indicating its innate potential to generate agricultural products and food items. This theme is being deliberated upon today for a simple reason, which is that we believe in the African potential. We believe in our ability to produce and to be independent. We believe we can subsist to our own needs without relying heavily and dangerously on importations, the cost of which are hefty and unpredictable. We also believe that the rising youth have the potential to become professionals who interface with modernized agriculture and are able to generate wealth for their families and for the state. One of the most significant problems is to make the agricultural sector attractive to youth so that they do not naturally turn away to more trendy or fashionable jobs or just to live in the cities and towns rather than in the countryside. In order to make the difference, we have to find ways to reverse the trend of these past years and make living and working in the countryside and in agriculture more attractive and profitable. There is no way to sideline people's natural inclination for a better life, an easier life, able to provide for the necessities of their families and to have a degree of comfort and security. We need to be able to demonstrate the gains that can be made with new methods in agriculture, with mechanization and modernization, but also in the provision of facilities and services to rural areas. I think we have seen too much of the resource drain from the rural sector to urban centers. The question is, can we reverse the trend? This symposium is being held because we believe in the functions of Parliament, which can drive positive change in society and resolve inherent problems, such as poverty through social such as poverty, through social accountability, modern agriculture can be a solution to sponge out youth unemployment and at the same time heighten food security. I am sure it is a shared wish by all members today that famine should end in our respective SADC countries. No individual should be losing his or her life to lack of food or malnutrition, especially when the soil is so rich and resources are abundant. Today, we therefore meet to deliberate through a panel on ways in which parliaments can exercise a role in abolishing famine and making agriculture blossom in the region. Notwithstanding natural disasters, which are becoming more and more devastating and gruesome, it is the role of parliaments to make the region resilient through laws, policies, and oversight mechanisms which can protect citizens against the vicissitudes of environmental disasters and their effect on agriculture. It is therefore necessary to address the cross-cutting themes of agriculture, energy security, food security, youth unemployment, and resilience to climate disasters together, to make headway and find solutions which are adequate to the region. This symposium is designed to be an eye-opener and constitutes also a way to put the theme of modernized agriculture back on the region's radar. The need for change is past due, and the Forum has boldly taken the first step in that direction. With these words, I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a pleasant and informative symposium. Thank you. Before I call on our next speaker, I would like to kindly advise delegates that earphones are available for interpretation, and the channels are Channel 1 is English, Channel 2 is French, and Channel 3 is Portuguese. I hope you find your way to these channels easily enough. It is my pleasure now to call on the Honorable Hussein Bashe, the Minister of Agriculture in the government of Tanzania, for his address on the theme of the symposium. Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Speaker of the United Republic of Tanzania, Secretary General of SADC PF, distinguished members of the SADC PF, ladies and gentlemen, as I was introduced, my name is Hussein Bashe. I'm the Minister of Agriculture from the United Republic of Tanzania. It's a great pleasure for me to get this opportunity to share my thoughts and what we do in Tanzania for the bigger ambition of an African continent to unlock the bigger challenge as rightly presented by you, Mr. President, and the House. So my presentation will have 4 or 5 major areas whereby I'll just try to highlight the historical perspective in the mix of Tanzania, SADC, EAC, and the entire African continent, and compare it with Tanzanian market. We'll look the challenge in the African continent, but also localize it in Tanzania. And at the end, we'll come up with my proposals and way forward as how we see here home what should be the way forward toward the ambition of modernizing the agricultural sector with some of people call it the youth population as a challenge, but I consider it as a very big opportunity and a blessing to our continent. So globally, agricultural land area is approximately 5 billion hectares, 38% of the global land surface. About 1/3 of this is used as a crop land, and 2/3 is used for the pasture and grazing. Africa has an around 1.1 back. Dad. Hello?
Honorable delegates, we are about to resume. Thank you.
We'll continue. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. As I started initially, I said that it's a great honor for me to be part of this panel and to present our thoughts and opinion on the dream of every African country for the modernizing the agricultural sector. As I said initially, that the global agricultural land area is approximately 5 billion hectares. 38%, which is 1.7 billion hectares, is used for crop land, and 2/3 is used for pasture and grazing. But 1.1 billion hectares of agricultural land used for the cultivation of crops and production of animal is in Africa. 65% of world remaining uncultivated arable land and has the potential to produce enough food to feed itself, to feed Africa, and to contribute to expected 9.7 billion people by 2050. That we, Africa, we are sitting at 65% of the arable land which has not been utilized. But out of 5 billion hectares, 1.7 hectares is in Asia, which is used for cultivation, and 1.1 billion in Africa, according to FAO. But the protection of the agricultural land remains a major challenge across the continent, as only 10% of Africa rural land is registered. Majority of the African rural land where our smallholder farmers are has not been properly registered. But while Africa holds more than 65% of the world uncultivated arable land, the continent's share in global agricultural production remains low. And as we all know, the key challenge is productivity. Vast area of land uncultivated and productivity is lower than in much of the rest of the world. In addition, around 2/3 of the African population is employed within the sector, the vast majority working on small-scale farms that currently produce around 90% of all our output. 90% of entire agricultural output is produced by the smallholder farmers. Intra-regional agricultural trade is mostly food commodities, as most countries produce similar traditional export crop, such as coffee, cashew nuts, cotton, etc., with weak domestic demand due to weak industrial base. Currently, according to the statistics, an average price of 1 kg of coffee Africa exports to the other part of the world, the value is an average of $4. But when Africa imports 1 kg of a made coffee, we spend $20. Africa import bill is an average of 80 billion per annum and increased to 84 billion by 2022 and projected to reach 110 billion by 2025. In all commodities, interregional trade in Africa is only 15%, compared with EU 67%, Asia 60%, and America 46%. The trade between ourselves is lower than what we trade with Europe and Asia. Tanzania is among 10 inter-regional agricultural exports, topped by South Africa, Egypt, Uganda, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, and Zambia. Study done by Dr. Kweka indicate Tanzania in Africa Free Trade shows Tanzania has a competitive advantage in export of cereals, pulses, and oilseeds. When we decided to commission ESRIF to do a comparative analysis, what should be a competitive, what area Tanzania should invest more, and embracing the comparative advantage, because for where we stand today, Africa need to complement each other instead of competing each other. Because what I produce in a lower cost should be traded with our neighbor, and we import what our neighbors are producing in a lower cost. Example, we import a lot of wheat, but now Zimbabwe, they have done a very good job in wheat. Why should I invest more money in producing wheat while I can import from my neighbor African country? Sudan, they are doing the same. Misri, they are doing the same. Why should I not invest more in maize where I have a comparative advantage compared to other regional parts? Why should we invest more in soya while Zambia can produce more soya than us, and we can produce more maize or rice than them? So this is a question of Africa to start sitting down and discussing comparatively and analyzing the competitive edge of each country. So agricultural export for sub-Saharan Africa marks 9.7 billion per annum in 2019, and food import bill was 48 billion compared to 46 billion in 2018. But where are we importing this food from? Mainly is from Europe. But statistics shows 283 million Africans go to bed hungry every day. We have no choice as time is not on our side. The population of Africa will rise to 2 billion by 2050, and they must be fed. We must take decisive action now to secure food supplies. So this is the picture of the agricultural land in Tanzania. As you can see, that 10% is used for grazing, 23% is used for crop production, 22% is used for wildlife reserve, 10% is forestry protection, and 23% is used for forestry, water bodies, and other type of the protections. So this is an overview of Tanzania agricultural sector contribution. Tanzania economy has been registering a very good growth with whatever we call global challenges. We know nowadays, every day when we wake up, we say there is a Ukraine crisis, we say there is a Russian crisis, we talk about COVID, But the first question to ask ourselves as a SADC or SADC, EAC, COMESA is, for how long we will continue to be affected by the problems which are not African problems. 61.5% of the population in our country is employed in agricultural sector. This sector contributes 26.1% of the GDP, but it contributes only 65% as an input for the industrial. But it produces 30% of the forex. But let's look at its growth now. The agricultural sector in Tanzania is growing at an average of 3.9% by 2021. Look at the construction sector is growing by 13.8. Industry sector is growing by 7.8. But between 65 to 70% of the agricultural activities in our country are run by the smallholder farmers. But we have decided to analyze the pyramid of the constraints in agricultural sector in Tanzania. But the same picture applies to other parts of the African continent. We have shown from the climate to the cost of inputs, to the access to land, low price of agricultural produce, pest disease, availability of input, soil fertility, land ownership, availability of quality seed, extension services, access to credit, access to market and market information, crop theft, access to water and domestic use, all of this. But these are the problems which are facing Tanzania, but also they are affecting other parts of the continent. Later on, I'll conclude by showing all these problems are driven by only two things. So we decided to picture the entire African continent, how the climate change is affecting. When we look at the map, we see where the low, up to where the areas where we see very serious climatic crisis are affecting the continent. Tanzania is also in a serious threat, like any other majority of the African continent. But if you analyze the health of the soil, you can see 2.3 billion hectares of the world land is affected by the toxicity. We see the problem of the salinity and all other issues which are affecting the productivities. But let's talk about when we are talking about the transformation, we must ask ourselves, how are we faring on the uptake of the improved varieties? And the key question to the House is, who owns this seed? Do we own ourselves, or someone else owns the seed? So we can see 62% of farmers in Southern Africa, excluding South Africa, they don't access the improved varieties. 67% in EAC, they don't access the improved varieties. But the key question is, who owns the seed? But now let's go for the utilization of the fertilizer. And the key question to ourselves is, where do we get our fertilizer from? While Eastern Asia, they are using 615 kg per hectare. Southern Africa countries, we are using 56 kg per hectare. But the utilization of phosphate, Africa, and it is said by FAO and all other people, that the food demand globally will increase by 50% when we reach 2050, while the productivity will be going down. So we must prepare ourselves now. Now, I decided to come up with this map. This map shows SADC population, shows EAC population, shows COMESA. This is the potential of these three regional blocks. When we look at COMESA, we are talking about 390 million people. SADC 379, EAC 312. But these three blocks, how many countries are partly, if you look at Tanzania, we are in SADC and EAC. When you look Kenya, you find Kenya, they are in COMESA and EAC. But are we trading? The three blocks, are they trading properly? Are we complementing each other? Are we competing or complementing? Are we blocking each other? These are very important questions to ask ourselves. So, this is the rise of Africa youth population against world continent. We are told by the professionals, the average age of Africa is 20 years old. Asia, they are saying, is 30 years old. Europe is 40 years old. But this is the growth of our population. While we are growing very fast, Asia is coming down. You can see the green is Latin America. The red one is an Africa growth of population. The yellow one, which is coming down, is an Asia population. So I took the pyramid of the Tanzanian population. This is a youthful country, whereby while the Africa average age is 20, Tanzania is 18. Over 70% of the Tanzanian population is below 40s. Is it a threat or is it an opportunity? It can turn to be a threat or it can turn to be an opportunity. But out of 12 million households, which is a labor force, 7.8 million households are employed in agricultural sector. So Tanzania has made a great strides in enhancing agricultural productivity. There is a room for improvement. Current adoption rate, improved seeds, we are at 28%. Irrigation, we are at 4%. We have 29 million hectares arable for irrigation in our country. Thanks to President Samia Suluhu Hassan for the last 2 years. Now we are heading at least to 1.2, 1.3. And as a minister, I've been given a target. And the Madam Speaker, every year when we go to the House, she asks questions. How far have we gone? The target is to attain 8 million hectares of irrigation by 2030, and to make sure that 50% of agricultural activity in our country by 2030 to be supported by irrigation. It's an ambitious target. But only 24% of our agricultural activities are supported by organic fertilizer. And thanks to President Samia, this year we are going to launch our own first fertilizer factory, which will produce 1 million metric tons per annum. And we have agreed with our neighbors, Kenya, Uganda, they can access the fertilizer from Tanzania, and we have already signed with Kenya with 200,000 metric tons they will buy from the factory in Tanzania. So I decided to take the historical perspective of Africa growth trajectory since independence. And here you can see there are two graphs. between 60 up to 70, there was an upward trend of growth in Africa economies. After that, we went down, but now we are growing. I'll show you later what was the situation when there was between 60 up to 75. There was an upward growth, and the contributing factor was an agricultural sector. It is said that the average per capita income of Africa is $1,147. But if we could maintain the growth of 1960 to 1970, today the average per capita income could be $1,841. But the growth, we put 3 blocks, and this was the study done by Dr. Osmani of the group called Academia 2063. The strong growth, the first 60 and 70, and then we went down, and then we sustained the recovery. There was a contributing factors to these behaviors. This was the colonial time, when the colonial companies drove growth pre-independency, strong economic growth. Then we came up with a nationalist government, which were, from my opinion, they were important at that time, because most of the African continent were fighting for their independency, so there was a need of changing both policies and everything to attain the bigger objective. There was a short in science and technology, effective agriculture policy, hyperinflation, and all those factors contributed the downtrend of the growth in the economies. And there was a lot of sacrifices at that time. But when you look at the history after 670s, the market component, government agencies have complete monopoly to buy from producers at that time. And the pricing of commodities was administratively set pre-season and as per territory by the governments. There was a lot of restriction on private trading at that time. Restriction on the private processing. In our country, example, we had something like called national milling. When you farm, you have to sell to national milling. Distribution and fertilizer, you can see every country has its own policy. Tanzania maize producers price set by the National Agricultural Board. Malawi maize price for all producers set by the ADMAC. So every country had, the economies were state-controlled economies. But if we could take the growth of 60 to 70, and the private equity was allowed, and the private sector was vibrant at that time, you can see the blue color shows the expected contribution of the agricultural sector to the GDP, to each African country. But the red color shows the contribution of the agricultural sector as the actual, depending on the policies of at that particular time. Now, Africa had the fastest agricultural growth rate of any region in 2000. Now there was no fight for the independence. After 90s, there was no Africa country which was under colonial hands. Now the focus was the growth. Now the private equity has been allowed, the private companies have been allowed, the competition has been allowed, the value addition has started taking place. So we took analysis of the growth of all other regions globally. We compared with Africa. You can see the red color is the Africa growth in the agricultural sector compared with other parts of the world. Drivers was the improved economic governance, strong private sector, lower inflation and debt level, removal of implicit tax burden, higher saving and FDI levels, increased public investment. You can see now, after taking those measures, how the graph of the inflation went down. And all the measures were supporting the agricultural sector. So, what is the Tanzanian government doing? The first step which was taken by the Madam President Samia Suluhu Hassan when she took over the office, she decided to put more effort into agricultural sector by increasing the public financing, by increasing the public budget from 294 billion shilling 2021-2022 to 970 billion T shilling by 2023-2024. But where are we investing? Invest in the research and development, providing farmers with access to modern technology and equipment to help improve agricultural productivity and efficiency. This includes irrigation system, mechanization tools such as tractors and harvesters and etc. The bigger chunk of the budget, over 50% of the budget, is going to the irrigation. And the second largest public funding is research and development. Because what we believe in Tanzania is he who owns the seed owns your food. And we decided that our research and development, the foundation will be our traditional seed. We are developing our seed, the hybrid seed and modern seed by our research institute by using our own traditional seeds. And thank God now we have developed different varieties from maize, wheat, and others, and we have started distributing it. We are investing much on infrastructure, road storage facility. We are reducing our post-harvests from 30% to 5%. The irrigation budget 2020-2021 was 50 billion, but now is 361 billion shilling. We are embracing the modern technologies by using the pivot technologies and other irrigation equipment in the seed production, because we believe that the productivity equation starts with research and development and seed multiplication. When you perfect these two, you add with irrigation, you get out of the problem of the productivity. So the government has decided to launch what we call Kilimo Biashara, aims at the growth of 10% by 2030. Currently, we are growing at 3.9. The government decision is by 2030, the agricultural sector has to grow by 10% for the next 10 years and start going down. To achieve this target, the government has come up with a different intervention, including public investment and private sector to invest in agriculture and increase budgetary allocation. We have decided to allow the private sector to come into the seed multiplication, because public entities only cannot do the seed multiplication alone. We have to invite our own private companies to do the seed multiplication. We need to develop our own African Monsanto and other type of the companies. But the youth, for us, the youth is not a curse. Where I come from in my region, the pride of a family is how many kids do you have. If you want to lose your seat in my constituency, discuss the population. So we decided, the government decided to take the advantage of the youth. We came up with a program called BBT, Building Better Tomorrow. You cannot build a better tomorrow with Hussein. There has to be my young brothers and sisters. So what was the challenge? The number one challenge for youth in Africa is access to land. They don't own land. The second challenge is technology. They cannot go to the farm using the old technology of their grandfathers. They want modern technology. Third is capital. The financial infrastructure globally and Africa financial infrastructure, they don't finance the idea. They finance collateral. If you go to the bank, when you fill the form, the key question, what collateral do you have? A youth from university does not have collateral. He has his certificate. He has spent 20 years in the classroom, get out of with certificate, and you're asking them a collateral. They don't have collateral. Market and skills. So the government decided from now onwards what we will do. The government has allocated 1 million hectares. Government is acquiring the land, preparing the land, installing the modern technology, and giving each youth who is going to the farm an average of 10 acres with a title deed. But with that, we support them with a grant and soft loan. Current interest rate on the financial institution is between, if you're in agricultural sector, you have collateral and you are going for farming. Thanks to President Samia, for the first time, we are accessing loans at an average of 9%. But for youth, now the government decided to open up a window under what we call agricultural trust fund, and they will be accessing loans at an average of 4.5% interest rate. But what else are we doing? We want to protect and conserve natural resources. We are undertaking legal and policies and institutional reform to increase performance and efficiency in the agricultural sector. Promote and invest in value-added product, encourage the development of value addition, such as processed foods, beverage, help to increase the value of crops and improve the overall competitiveness of the sector. We have realized that whenever there is a big boys globally, they decide today the cotton price is X. Our farmers, they suffer. But we import shirts from China. So the government is taking a major reform on the textile by, we call it a tripartite agreement. There is a processors of the lint, there is a second level processors, and there is a Ministry of Finance. So we came up with what we call collateral management system, whereby all the lint produced, they will be going under a certain infrastructure. The processors, they will be accessing with that under the guarantees of the Ministry of Finance. But we support smallholder farmers with the microloans and market access, promote and institutionalize of block farming model, because we realize that an average acre of a farmer in Tanzania is 2.5 acres. We believe agriculture is economies of scale. So the government decided to develop a scheme called block farm system, whereby when we acquire big land, we relocate those small farmers from 2.5 acres and give them an average of 10 acres, so that they can get advantage of economies of scale under one block. So it is our ambition that we increase our export value to $5 billion US dollar. We want to take advantage of the horticulture subsector, which is growing very fast. And for us, we are turning away from the traditional export-oriented by defining cashew, tobacco, cotton as our major export crop. To us now in Tanzania, food is our major driver for the export because the world wants to eat. But we are investing much on extension services by taking advantage of the digital platforms and technique in the rural and provide the service to the farmers. But we introduced subsidy. It was a very huge discussion with World Bank and IMF. But we started last year, and thanks for the support of the House, the program will continue for the next 3 years. Why? Because an average per capita consumption of Tanzanian farmer for a fertilizer is 19 kg. Why? Because of affordability, availability. So the government has decided to tackle this problem by putting subsidy on the input and allowing the farmer, when the global prices of fertilizer went up, Tanzanian farmers last year, they bought fertilizer at 50% of the global price. The government supported, and this program is continuing up to maybe 2025, 2026, so that we can increase the uptake of the farmer fertilizer. And I'm saying it was a huge discussion whenever, and let me say this, Mr. President, Africa need to make a decision now, because we cannot rely, and not in a bad intention, in a good intention, we cannot rely on the so-called international institutions like World Bank and IMF to tell us how to deal with our problem in the agricultural sector. We cannot continue like that, because personally I've experienced how when we decided to develop a subsidy scheme on fertilizer and seed, and how they have discouraged us. And for the first year, our fertilizer consumption increased from 340,000 metric tons to 510 metric tons. The first year. They are saying, you know, this is a burden to your economy and everything. But they forget that if we use more fertilizer, this year we are expecting to produce maize from 6.4 million metric tons we produced a year ago to 9.5 million metric tons this year. But they are saying it's an expensive to your economy, but they don't understand that this is an input. It's like any other investment. It's like building a road to facilitate transport, to reduce the cost of transport. We will get the output at the end of the day when the farmer produces. At low cost, it will reduce our cost of inflation. The prices of food will go down when the cost per unit goes down. So this is very important for us to come up with a comprehensive and African solution to African problems. We are providing support on this, on the seed subsidy. We all know, and majority of us came from villages. We know how farmers are conservative. Transforming a farmer from the traditional seed, giving them an improved seed, it takes time. They must trust the process. We must reduce the costs. That's why the government has decided to subsidize, especially on the areas where we import more, edible oil. We are subsidizing the palm subsector. We are subsidizing the sunflower subsector so that to increase the productivity of our farmers. By 2030, we did a projection by 2030. What size of land do we need to produce 650,000 metric tons of improved variety? We need 350 hectares. The government has already started investing, acquiring the land, and improving the technology so that when the dry season, we continue producing seed. When the farmers are going to the farm, they get the seed they require. 2018, the private African and Tanzanian companies in the seed subsector in Tanzania were only 11 companies. But now they are 32 with the government support. What we do is we give our own seed companies the government-owned land so that they can use that land to produce the seed. And the government concentrate on production of the seed which are not commercially viable at that particular time. Now, majority of maize seed is produced by the private company. And when they produce, the government offtake at a market price, and we distribute at subsidized price. We are investing on soil tests. We are almost now, over 50% of our country has already been tested the soil, and we know in every village and every district what type of the soil is it, what type of fertilizer is it, and that's why we have supported a lot on the blending facilities of the fertilizer so that we can develop a fertilizer as per requirement of a specific area, instead of the generic methods whereby we import DAP and urea and utilize it on the land, but some of the areas don't need that. So these are the key drivers. We developed 4 pillars: drivers, risk, adaptation strategy, and the outcome we are expecting. So what are the opportunities do we have as an Africa? We have underutilized arable land. We have an increased population which demand food. Growing youth population with energetic labor force. Intra- and intra-Africa trade agreements such as WAFTA and others. That this is an opportunity when you look at what we call the blocks. Available raw material for agro-industry such as minerals, fertilizer, food for both human and animal feed, capacity for Africa to restructure global financing in Africa given the available potential. We have this opportunity now to go on the global stage to renegotiate the global financial architecture. This is the time for Africa to do that, and we can, because I believe we have arable land, we have energetic population, growing very fast. When you look the graph of the productivity to the developed countries, they are already at the maturity level. We are at the growing stage. It's a time for us to negotiate with the global players, equally on the table, because we have what we can offer. They need Africa, we need them, we need each other. This is not the time for Africa to continue begging the international platforms. It's a time for us to negotiate, discuss trade, discuss business, and fair deal. But we can only attain that if we start that home. We have an technology serves as a key driver of the productivity, growth, research and development is required across the entire value chain. Land reform and land administration will continue to become among the many agenda in transformation journey. The need for appropriate policy and laws, improving food system and agribusiness will promote agricultural trade in EAC, SADC, AU, and the world. Emerging challenges such as climate resilience to drought, floods, and other threats must be addressed appropriately. The future of the world is agribusiness, with a need to feed 2.4 billion population in Africa and global population of 9.7 by 2050. Africa's urban food market will attain a total value of more than 400 billion, and the food system business will reach to 1 trillion by 2030. According to FAO projections, 60% more food need to be produced to feed the world by 2050. Africa continent food demand continue to outstrip domestic supply by about 20%, with an average of import bill of 80 billion, growing at an average of 6% annually. Africa continent food demand continue to outstrip domestic supply by 20%, with an average of 80 billion and growing at an average of 6% annually. That's a growth of the demand by 6% annually. Unpredicted economic crisis by natural calamities and international conflict with the Ukraine and other may continue to happen from time to time. Hence, Africa must improve independency. In order to readdress the existing challenge, we propose the following. Sustain regional integration as provided for in various ratified documents. Enhance inter-Africa trade, considering comparative and competitive advantage. The Africa should stop competing to each other. Establish robust financing mechanism through local and international organizations in order to support ongoing individual initiatives, programs, projects, and innovation. We must renegotiate the global financing mechanisms because we contribute to the global financing platforms. As we strive to make agriculture sexy and attractive to youth, labor-saving technology, mechanization, and digitalization are imperative. Parliamentarians to continue to advocate for harmonization, ratification, domestication, and implementation of SADC protocol, treaties, and other decisions at a member state governance. Member state 3 is technology. Youth will never go to agriculture if they cannot make money. No young man will go for an area whereby they cannot make money. Financing. If we want to invest in research and development, we need money. If we want to invest in the seed multiplication, we need funds. If we want to invest in the irrigation, we need funds. If we want to invest in the post-harvest losses, we need funds. If we want to train our scientists to do research and development to produce improved variety of seed, we need money to invest on the training of these people. We need both public and private. And mostly personally, as Hussein, we need homegrown private sector because there will be no repatriation of profits and capital. We need to embrace the technology so that we can attract youth. Karibuni Tanzania, thank you very much.
I want to express my very deep appreciation to the Honorable Minister Hussein Bashir for his inspiring presentation. I have no doubt that what he has done, he has sown a seed of hope, which I think we need to nurture and grow. Thank you very much, Minister. Honorable delegates, we will now have presentations on the theme by the heads of delegation from all our member countries. Because of the limits of time, we will ask you to be very brief. We will allocate 7 minutes per head of delegation. I'm very sorry for the shortness. I'm sure you might have a lot to say, but we do need to get through this session in time. So I will, okay, you ready to start? Mm-hmm. I think it's a bit, let's call time at 7 and then you can conclude. Thank you, honorable delegates. What we will do is let you know when we have reached 7 minutes, and then you can proceed to the conclusion. I will start in alphabetical order, and we will call on the head of delegation of Angola.
Thank you, Honorable President of the Parliamentary SADC Forum, and to the President of the Parliament of Seychelles, Your Excellencies at the High Table, Speakers of the national parliaments, ladies and gentlemen. I am representing the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Angola, Dr. Carolina Cerqueira, and it's an honor for me to make the presentation of Angola's report on the implementation of the resolutions adopted during the last plenary session of the SADC Parliament, which took place in December 2022. And it urged member states to adopt a set of measures
I think you will have noticed that we are addressing the symposium, the theme. May I go to the next speaker and perhaps come back to Angola? Thank you. We will. Thank you. We will go to the next speaker. I will just perhaps advise the delegations, if they do not have a presentation that is ready, we may well pass on and go on to the next delegation. Can I call on Botswana?
Good morning, Mr. President, and protocol observed. Despite the short notice, we will try and put on our high speed. Botswana's food security situation is stable and is largely attributable to peace, democracy, and good microeconomic management. The country has adopted food security approach in the 1990s and has an peace, please, quiet, please. The country has adopted food security approach in the 1990s and has an extensive food security safety net that accommodates the vulnerable groups in society. The early warning system is also very effective. The major constraint in the economy is a heavy reliance on diamonds and a small population. There are attempts to diversify the economy. Long-term food security objectives should rely on regional trade and export-led growth based on the exploitation of areas of potential in agriculture that will rely on the wide regional market. Finally, land use and planning should be an integral part of future agricultural policy to ensure the conservation of communal-led and sustainability of the livestock sector amongst the poor. The main objective of Botswana's food security policy is to stabilize food supply. Mr. President, I pray for peace, for quiet, please. That's what I normally say when I'm in the House, so that we have productivity.
Thank you. Can we have your attention, please?
On a point of order. On a point of order.
The main objective of Botswana's food security policy is to stabilize food supply and enhance household access to food through reduction of the incidence of poverty. It is generally agreed that household food security can only be achieved if micro-level availability of food is guaranteed and opportunities to access acceptable food either through our production, purchase transfers are also available. In Botswana, households acquire a significant part of their food through purchases. For instance, 80% of total consumption was purchased, while 8% was from our own produce. This signifies a high reliance on imports than produce. The country is a net importer of cereals, mostly maize and wheat, which on average satisfy about 70% of the domestic needs for both food and feed. Cereal import requirements in the 2022-2023 market year, April-March, are forecast at 370,000 tons, an 8% decline compared to the five-year average level, reflecting the large domestic production in 2022. Despite the forecast for reduced import quantities, the total import bill is expected to increase year on year in 2022-2023, owing to the elevated global prices of cereals and energy. According to the last data by Statistics Botswana, the value of cereal imports represented 20% of the total food bill in May 2022, compared to 50% in May 2021. Primarily reflecting a significant increase in the cost of importing wheat, largely sourced from or through the Republic of South Africa. Past food self-sufficiency-based agricultural policy in Botswana concentrated on import subsidies through the Arable Lands Development Program, ALDEP for short, and FAP financial assistance policy, which were not successful in generating the desired employment in agriculture. Although both were popular and successful distributive mechanisms of farm inputs, no increased productivity in subsistence farming production was observed. Reasons included implementation during a prolonged drought period and inadequate monitoring. The next agricultural policies now focuses on the development of commercial arable agriculture in high potential zones for sustainable output and job creation. This is expected to increase new employment opportunities in commercial agriculture for the poor by 50% and develop linkages with other sectors that would provide a further 15% increase in total employment, which also will contribute towards food security. Given Botswana's small market, beef is the main agricultural export in Botswana and generates rural employment, and cattle industry is the main contributor to the 15% share of agriculture in total employment. The Republic of Botswana has maintained a stable food security situation because of stable microeconomic policies, transparency, and minimal levels of corruption, social responsibility, and effective monitoring system. Some of the past policies aimed at achieving household food security, such as the FAP and the drought subsidies for livestock, led to some environmental degradation of communal land. For us as a country to achieve sustainable food security objectives, we will have to develop and exploit our potential in agricultural production and explore more on areas where we have comparative. We have started investing in small stock production, such that we reach not only a sustainable state, but so we can export more. We have also recently introduced import bans.
May I ask you to conclude, Honourable
I
Speaker?
am just gravitating towards my summary, my Lord. We have recently introduced an import ban on some crops as a way on encouraging our people to be self-reliant. The government further developed the EastPart program, where farmers are assisted not only with farm implements, but with seeds, to quote my Tanzanian Minister of Agriculture that he who owns the seed owns the food. But with seeds and drilling of boreholes to water plants, as most of the country is desert. The Youth Development Fund also has been developed so as to get the youth into agriculture and make it seem attractive to them, as they are the future of our country. My President, I submit accordingly, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. I have a small adjustment to announce, but the Honorable Speaker from Zimbabwe, do you still have a point of order?
Yes, Mr. President.
Please.
I think in terms of the usual practice, those that present use the podium, and during a debate, you speak from where you are. That's the practice.
Mr. Speaker, yes, the point has been noted, and we would like to announce, I have information that some countries don't have presentations, so this will allow us to be a little more lenient with time, and we will propose 10 minutes. And we will invite the presenters to address from the podium. And the next head of delegation is SADC.
Thank you, Mr. President of the SADC PF, the Honourable Speaker of the host, Dr. Tulia Axon, Honourable Speakers of the SADC family, Honourable Members of Parliament, the Secretary General, SADC staff, ladies and gentlemen, good morning today. Good morning. Yes, in order to be within the 10 minutes, Mr. President, let me rush. We are looking on modernizing agriculture to address food insecurity and youth unemployment in the SADC region, and the role of Parliament, more especially of Eswatini. As I introduce the subject, Mr. President, youth unemployment is a challenge threatening the economic performance of many countries. Youths face a myriad of challenges in finding employment opportunities and competing with more experienced adults, like myself. A combination of limited youth involvement in agriculture and an aging farmer community presents a huge risk to the future of food production system in Southern Africa and beyond. According to the UN Habitat of 2013, African youth constitute 60% of urban dwellers, with a rural-urban migration in search for better economic opportunities contributing to this dynamic. However, a study by the African Development Bank Group reported that only 3 million jobs are created in Africa, despite 10 to 12 million youths joining the workforce annually. The situation has been made worse by COVID-19 pandemic, which has led to a loss of 1.7 million jobs or more in the region. It is true that among potential solutions to unemployment, transforming the agricultural sector is the most promising, with a possibility of creating 40 million jobs in Africa within the next decade. However, agriculture practices are predominantly in rural areas, which are experiencing labor force exit to non-farm employment, according to a recent FAO report. Mr. President, let us look on the strategies of modernizing agriculture to curb food insecurity and unemployment as initiated by the Kingdom of Eswatini. One, reversing urban sprawl by incentivizing the youth to migrate back to the rural areas and contribute to agriculture and rural development is therefore key in attaining Sustainable Development Goals. This has been a prominent topic among diverse stakeholders as the youth presents the potential of transform the sector through their rich technological know-how and provision of innovative workforce. Number two, creating practical linkages of prioritized technical knowledge to agricultural production. There has been a gap in linking academic knowledge with their practical complications to agricultural innovation and development. Academic internship, however, have been hosted by established farmers and entrepreneurs to impart content-based knowledge and offer students an opportunity to demonstrate their gained knowledge in real-life problem-solving skills. This boosts their confidence and hope in becoming successful and contented in the agricultural sector's post-academic life. Three, value addition and establishment of reliable and controlled markets for agricultural produce. Young people perceive agriculture as a profession of intense labor, not profitable and unable to support their livelihoods compared to white-collar jobs offers. Four, youth-responsive land tenure reforms. Tenure rights provide guidelines for access, utilization, and management of land, hence fundamental of youth engagement in agriculture. However, processes of formulating such strategies rarely incorporate the views of the youth, thereby fail to address their prioritized need and limiting their ownership. The framework below informs future reforms that will enhance youth participation in the tenure reforms. Five, access to startup capital. Driven by the theme, the future of Africa's agriculture rests on the youth. A special call by Food Agricultural Organization encourages stakeholders to invest in empowering the youth by creating innovation hubs which link the youth to investors and promote innovative agricultural practices. Youth unemployment programs and youth development funds are usually accessible and equitable, distributed through the Youth Fund. The Rural Development Fund is committed to empower the youth through innovative agricultural transformation and content-based programs. Then the case of Eswatini and the role of Parliament. The Kingdom of Eswatini is a relatively small country in the region and well over, with an agro-based economy. The country participates in the global agricultural trade arena. The country trades in processed and non-processed food products. All this is included through the intervention of the National Agricultural Marketing Board, Eswatini Development Enterprise, as well as affiliation with COMESA, Food Agricultural Organization. Then the key agricultural food products that are being exported by the Kingdom of Eswatini. The Kingdom of Eswatini exports sugar into the international markets and in Africa, exports high-quality beef to overseas countries, processed dairy products, processed dairy products that is being exported to SADC and overseas. Citrus is also being exported to Europe and the Republic of China on Taiwan. Cane foods are exported to the United Kingdom through the Rose Food Group and elsewhere in Africa. Baby vegetables are also being exported to the Republic of South Africa and overseas countries. Imports to the Kingdom of Eswatini. Yes, on the import side, the country imports goods from other SADC countries. The industries that can manufacture those goods generate income that can be used to purchase food at national and household level. Our milestones, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Deputy Prime Minister's Office, and the Ministry of Finance portfolio committees have endorsed that youth in the country are ready to be climate smart agripreneurs. They are also assisted by the Women Farmer Foundation. They have successfully hosted the Agriculture Indaba, whereby the object of the Indaba was to exposing the youth to many opportunities in the agricultural space. Then Parliament, through the Ministry of Agriculture, has partnered with the World Food Programme to help the youth in the following. One country priority funding of $250,000 focusing on baby vegetables and export and on capacities of innovative green technology. Two hand-in-hand initiatives of about $2 million. This initiative is to accelerate agricultural transformation and sustain rural development, to eradicate poverty and to end hunger at all forms and malnutrition. 3, there is Agri-Tech Business Hubs project worth over $5 million. This is support for farmers to establish small gardens, fruit trees, keeping of livestock, and it's mostly meat-based. Notably, Mr. President, the youth in the country is advised to get organized by joining the Ministry of Agriculture Industry Commodity Association. They are to aggregate the farming groups and cluster which in all constituencies, formalized by registering entities in agribusiness. Keep informed, register, and regularly visit United Nations Global Marketplace under the UN procurement portal. Mr. President, as I conclude, Parliament of the Kingdom of Eswatini, through the Ministry of Agriculture and other line ministries, has enhanced youth participation and leadership in producer organization and other rural institutions to empower them to engage in policy dialogue. Secondly, stimulated private sector investments to create a modern and dynamic agricultural sector and value chain, and to build infrastructure needed for agricultural investment. Thirdly, provide rural areas with better services such as agricultural inputs, electricity, education, and health. Fourthly, strengthen the physical, economical, social, and political links between small urban centers and their surrounding rural areas. Finally, Mr. President, invested more in information and communication technologies, which is ICT, which has the potential to improve efficiency in some farm work and facilitate access to market information and business opportunities. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you, Eswatini. I will call on the head of delegation of Lesotho.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and all protocols observed. I am Dwang Sekhamane from Lesotho. Became Speaker of Parliament only in October of 2022. I'm speaking totally off the cuff, Mr. President. I must start with my great appreciation of the speech made here by the Honorable Minister, Bashe. I found it very informative, eloquent, and highly inspiring. Thank you very much, Minister. In the case of Lesotho, it is a country that has only 9% arable land. And this is why Lesotho is known as the Mountain Kingdom, or Kingdom in the Sky. We literally live very close to heaven. We have the highest, lowest point in the world, literally meaning we live on a rock up there. So our land is largely mountainous and tortuous, and ravines and valleys. Very little of it is arable. Mixed with that, we have had also a long tradition of working outside. Our young men working in the Republic of South Africa in the mines, and that systematically done to undermine agriculture in Lesotho. And so, with the new government coming in last year in October, as I pointed out, in the case of agriculture, the idea is to try and stop the culture of over-importing, largely from the Republic of South Africa, who is our only neighbor, as everybody would know. If you go from Lesotho and you go east, you go to South Africa. If you go west, you go to South Africa. If you go north, you go to South Africa. Anywhere you go. So the new government has intended to replace the deep culture of importation with production. And the strategy is to go into block farming, where we are going to buy a lot of the land that is owned by senior citizens who no longer really make good use of it. Buy it in blocks and make it available to young people. We have a good number of young graduates from the agricultural colleges in that country, but they neither have the money nor the land. And so government has decided that they are going to buy the land and make it available to young people and give them loans at reasonable rates. And they are ready, young people in Lesotho are ready, they are already doing a lot by way of modern agriculture. But as I say, they have neither the land nor the capital to finance themselves. Lesotho prides itself of one of the countries in the world that has the largest supplies and potential of water. That is why we are selling so much water at such a good rate to the Republic of South Africa, with a potential also to sell to Botswana. So, part of the strategy then is to go heavy into irrigation. As I said, the topography is very good for irrigation. The water comes from the mountains in the ravines and goes down to our arable lands. So there will be no reason to pump it this way or that way. It will just gravitate to the arable pieces of land. So we are expecting that the rate of unemployment, where in Lesotho government is the biggest employer, and so every graduate comes from university and expects to find employment with government, and the wage bill is going through the roof. And as a result, work is happening now to occupy all the young people that come out of universities and colleges and polytechnics into agriculture, so as to reduce employment, so that in 2030, we will be reasonably placed in terms of employment. We also, because as I said, we are just a mountain. We are very good traditionally in the production of wool and mohair that we export to China. And what we intend to do is now to stop exporting raw wool and raw mohair. We're going to go a lot now into value addition, so that, again, that is a potential employment for youth. And our youth grow up already. They know sheep, they know goats, they know how to mend them, and they know how to improve their breeds. It is now just a matter of adding a little bit of capital, adding value, and exporting value-added goods. What is the role of Parliament in all this? We have already been warned that there will be a lot of legislation coming our way by way of youth employment schemes, by way of value adding, and by way of transferring pieces of land from hands that can no longer use it properly to those that will do a good job. And we expect good economic growth. We expect that agriculture will begin to punch its way into making a significant addition to the GDP of our country. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Lesotho. I will call on the head of delegation of Malawi.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for giving the opportunity to the people of Malawi to add a word on the symposium theme. Let me start by saying that when agriculture relies on traditional technology, industrial development reduces the relative price of industrial products, but has a limited effect on per capita income because most labor has to remain in farming. Growth is not sustainable until this relative price drops below a certain threshold, thus inducing farmers to adopt modern technology that employs industry-supplied inputs. Once agriculture modernization begins, per capita income improves and accelerates towards modern growth. The increasing food prices and high fertilizer prices caused by the war in Ukraine is providing an opportunity to change the current discourse. As explained by the Minister of Agriculture of Tanzania, that Africa is affected by problems that are not African. Why should the war in Ukraine affect Africa? We have to do something on that. Malawi's economy remains largely an agro-based one, which accounts for more than 80% of export earnings and contributing 30% of gross domestic product, GDP, and provides a livelihood for 85% of the population. Smallholder farmers contribute sustainably to agriculture production with cropping systems dominated by maize-based rain-fed cultivation. The agriculture sector employs 64% of the country's workforce and contributes to food and nutrition security. Although there is potential for better production and productivity, the agriculture sector operates below its capacity as it relies heavily on rain-fed crop production and operates below its capacity as it relies heavily on rain-fed crop production, and as a result, the country continuously faces food shortages at national and household levels. This situation is necessitating the need for modernization of agriculture practices so as to ensure food sufficiency. Why is agriculture not attractive to youth? This is not a problem for Malawi only, but most of the countries in the SADC region. Agriculture is considered an attractive economic activity to many youths in most jurisdictions. That includes Malawi, whilst its importance cannot be overemphasized. This is because farmers regularly confront challenges such as climate change and issues pertaining to outdated farming practices and limited access to technology all the time, which hinder productivity and income generation, and thus rendering agriculture as unattractive to the youth. Youth people, therefore, can be encouraged to participate in agriculture with the right support, and that, despite their skepticism, they many consider it an accessible livelihood activity that can contribute to nations' development. Thus, technology is so pivotal to this transformation. It helps to improve how agriculture and its productivity are perceived. Technology has the capability to transform the way the agriculture sector is perceived by the average youth citizens of the region. A development that has potential to unlock opportunities in the sector. Now, let me explain what the government of Malawi is doing to help its citizens in the agriculture sector. The government of Malawi formulated the Green Belt Initiative, which aimed at using the available water resources to increase production, productivity, incomes, and food security at both household and national levels for economic growth and development. Farm employment opportunities are prerequisite to agriculture transformation. But for this to thrive, market mechanisms need to be strengthened, the business and investment climate improved, and investment made in productive infrastructure that can propel commercialization. This is but one area Parliament of Malawi has been investing its oversight role on. I will conclude by saying what is the role of Parliament on this. Using their functions, parliaments within the region must ensure that there is substantial allocation of resources towards the youth programs that have bearing of capacitating them to become better citizens of the member states and indeed the region. Thus, parliaments must advocate for allocation of resources that lead into creation of avenues for skills capacitation so as to help them contribute to the economic development of their states. Through such sectors as agriculture. The youth, therefore, hold so much potential of bringing in new knowledge and innovation in agriculture sector, which is the main GDP contributor of most SADC states. Thank you, Mr. President and the House.
Thank you, Malawi. I will now call on the head of delegation of Namibia.
Morning, President of SADC. I think now that the latitude is added of another 3 minutes, the rushing will be said. The able House Speaker of the United Republic of Tanzania, Madam Dr. Right Honorable Tulia Ackson, and all other senior speakers of our member states, the distinguished members of Parliament of our SADC fraternity, the Secretary General of our SADC PF, clerks of Parliament, members of the media, fellow Africans, good morning. Allow me at the first foremost to use this opportunity to profoundly first and thank our gracious host, the Right Honorable Speaker of the Republic of Tanzania, the United Republic of Tanzania. I mean, there's a unique calling in that name. It's the only African country or the country that I know that emphasizes the name, the United. And that boils down to the uniformity of the country that it's two countries actually. Some of the history of Africans we never tried to relate. It's two countries that merge to become one country. Tanganyika and Zanzibar. And that's a formidable plus in terms of moving forward as Africans. We must learn to consolidate and tolerate indifference. We can set a lot of many structures, but if we don't accept the indifference of each other, if we don't try and live with each other, then all others does not matter, whether it's trade, whether it's whatever. And I think that's one of the reasons why they need and stand out as a country, is that formidable of forming two countries, not just one. And there are more than 100 Tanzanian dialects in which they live together. Some of us out of 10, we can't just live each other. 10. And there are people on the African continent who are more than 100 different tribes, but they still form together and live together. I think Baba, wherever he is, has done his job. Mzee Maelimu Julius Kambarage. And that's the African values that we need to propel. See, sometimes we want to do wonderful things, but we fail in the basics. And yet the basics is the foundation of knowledge. We say knowledge is power, but in that equation there is something that we've always missed. Application of knowledge is power. Everybody knows what needs to be done, but none want to do what needs to be done. So therefore, application of knowing is the basic foundation of that. And therefore that brings us, we highly appreciate this to participate in this plenary session in Arusha, the safari capital of the United Republic of Tanzania. The theme of our plenary, modernizing agriculture to address food insecurity and youth unemployment in our SADC region, especially is suitable indeed, more especially after the world, and Africa in particular was hard hit by COVID, which resulted in the skyrocketing of prices and other commodities. That catastrophic event therefore showed us that it is time to redefine our thinking towards the agricultural sector and realize its significance in our region and continent. This will not only allow us to be less dependent on other parts of the world, but moving towards a step closer of being self-sufficient for the region and continent. Our continent and SADC region in particular have a great potential to feed itself and end hunger and food insecurity and becoming a significant player in the world's food markets while alleviating poverty and unemployment amongst our young people. This ability is found in its people, its land, its waters, that one even including the ones from Lesotho. It's not just land, it's also water, and its oceans, but they need to capacity building. It is therefore important that as leaders of our various national parliaments, under the umbrella of SADC Parliamentary Forum, we reaffirm our commitment towards ending food insecurity in our region and our continent that will lead to creating job opportunities for everyone. This, however, can only be done as legislators create a conducive environment, in our case as legislators in the law-making process. In SADC, where most residents depend on agriculture, directly or indirectly, as the primary source of income, agriculture continues to be a major factor for economic development, with 61% of the people still rely on it as a major source of income, employment, and sustenance. In my vernacular, way back before the Tswana and the Sotos and the Baurutsi and everybody formed, they came with a phrase and they allocate to say, Mudimu, komo ki mudimu onko imetsi, wa ikoka, wa koka boroko, wa naleone, wa koka horobali. Now, it's just that a pity he has spoken before me, but since he did not join the podium, once he joined the podium, the speaker, either one from Lesotho or Botswana, asked him to elaborate. As my seniors, they will be in a better place to say what it means. Now that just means way before our ancestors has identified agriculture. In this case, they just referred to a cow, but a cow encompasses agriculture. And then that in it was already defined by our ancestors, that it is the backbone and the foundation of all our livelihoods. So in the spirit of that, in SADC, the agriculture sector, therefore, mostly on farm production and has the greatest potential for reducing unemployment and underemployment in the sub-Saharan Africa due to the region's youth population growth and the current level of unemployment and underemployment in the region. Despite increasing employment rates in non-agricultural sectors in African nations, the continent's primary industry, agriculture, will remain a source of income for many of our citizenry. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, it is my understanding that we are all supporting this year's theme under the heading of Modernizing Agriculture to address food insecurity and youth unemployment in the SADC region, the role of parliaments. Because agriculture as a sector can contribute in important regional and continental goals, like eradicating poverty and hunger, and promoting inter-Africa trade and investment. The most able young Minister of Agriculture has elaborated that our trade amongst ourselves is less than 15%. By design, we have set ourselves up for failure. I don't think there's anything that you can do with a 15% amongst trade amongst our different as a nation. Now, if the statistics says that, and we are not able to accelerate the trust and conducive environment amongst ourselves, regardless of the knowledge and the capabilities that we have, if we don't improve on those basics, we'll always be in the starting blocks of advancing the interests and promoting agriculture. And therefore, that some of these things are very easy to understand. That's why the youth are not seeing this as a lucrative market to venture in. Because amongst ourselves, we don't do the trade. Because it does not serve as a priority. It seems as it does not serve as a priority, even if we're sounding it like it serves as a priority.
Please conclude, Honorable.
Africa's agriculture sector accounts to 35% of the continent's gross domestic product and provides the livelihood of more than 50% of the continent's population. It is therefore on the role of parliaments, I would like to urge all of us as member states to reaffirm our commitment through our parliaments to address the above challenges through inclusive legislation, frameworks to ensure that the young able people have access to land, natural resources, infrastructure, finance, technology, knowledge, and good remuneration for workers and producers in all to pull into agriculture. It is my plea that parliaments can play a crucial role in the transformation and modernizing of agriculture to address unemployment by defining specific and national budgets allocations to the sector. Many countries, if not all, has a challenge in identifying practical solutions to encourage and facilitate the youth population.
Please conclude.
With that, and under duress, I say asante sante dangi.
Thank you, Namibia. I will now call on Angola, the head of delegation, to take up the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Distinguished members of this session, dear participants in this symposium of ours, first of all, I would like to apologize to the President and to all participants for not coming prepared for this presentation because of the technical issue of translating the documents for this activity. And so I would like to ask your indulgence on this point. The theme, which has been very well introduced by His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture of Tanzania, reflects without any doubt the importance of this sector to our collective life, not only in this region of ours, but in general on the whole planet. In the case of Angola, when we talk about it, we think immediately to the challenge, first of all, of oil production. But effectively in Angola, we have a strong agricultural production. And in a very recent past, we, before the war and national independence, we were producing lots of crops, including coffee, cotton, banana, inter alia, which the war came to interrupt this normal cycle of Angola contributing to mitigating hunger and all over the world. And after the war was over, all our efforts are concentrating to try to give food security back to our country, and trying to mobilize those young people who were formerly used for the war effort and try to channel them to agricultural production. The government when we went through this gray area of our life, we have more resources that can and is trying to boost agriculture. And so we have been experiencing a boom in this aspect, in modernizing and employing now ways which are not traditional, technological, so that we can quality and quantity acceptable. This is how it is. We can explain that we've started exporting a number of crops, not only around in our neighboring countries, but also to European countries and countries like Portugal, Spain, France, and part of our production goes to Asia, so to China. We know that we still have great challenges because the fields were full of landmines, and there's a lot of efforts being made in order to demine those fields, and so that they can have a better not only for family agriculture, but for commercial agriculture, for mitigating hunger and in our country. And Mr. President, as I said at the beginning, we didn't have a written presentation, but I would like to assure everybody that the great effort being made for modernizing incentive to small-scale agriculture within the family and also in great scale in order to address the challenges we have in our country. And so thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Angola. I will now call on the head of delegation of the Republic of South Africa.
Honorable Speaker of the United Tanzania, but she's one of the leaders who believes in sharing and also developing the young women to build a strong women of her caliber. Thank you very much, Honorable Spiwe Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, for affording me this opportunity to present on behalf of South Africa. Under the theme Modernizing Agriculture to Address Food Security and Youth Unemployment in the SADC region, the role of parliaments. Firstly, I would like to welcome and appreciate the presentation by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture in this United Tanzania. Honorable President and esteemed members of the SADC Parliamentary Forum Plenary Assembly, I wish to thank all the resource persons of their insight presentation on the need of the modernized agriculture in our region towards food security and youth employment. Indeed, agriculture has the potential to address the numerous crises that our youth are currently facing, including poverty, inequality, and unemployment. The South African delegation therefore welcomes the relevance and timeliness of the theme of the SADC PF 53rd Plenary Assembly that we are discussing now. Honorable members, it is incredibly important for us to recall the Malambo Declaration on Accelerated Agricultural Growth and Transformation for Shared Prosperity and Improved Livelihood that commits our government to create job opportunities for at least 30% of the youth in agricultural value chains. As agriculture is a sector that has untapped potential and can become a reservoir of employment opportunities for the youth. The industry offers a host of career opportunities beyond farming, including agroeconomists, soil scientists, plant productive specialists, agricultural scientists, and food technologists. But we need to ensure that the youth is aware of all the opportunities and networks available to them. Honorable members, we must invest in our youth's capacities to become drivers of improvement in agriculture and food systems. Providing appropriate training, education, mentorship opportunities, and access to new technologies will enable young people to break through employment barriers and play a crucial role in the development of our agricultural sector. In this light, South Africa wishes to propose the following for inclusion in our resolution in this important topic. Firstly, Honorable President, that we call on SADC member parliaments to engage their national ministries of agriculture on their respective countries' implement of the commitments made under the Malambo Declaration, notably in terms of this creation of jobs for youth in agricultural value chains, the adoption of climate-smart agricultural technologies, and whether adequate financial has been allocated for these purposes. Secondly, for the SADC PF to establish a regular platform focused on youth and agriculture to enable sustained interaction between young people and parliamentarians. This will allow youth to share their experiences in the agricultural sector, learn about current agricultural support programs in the region, the exposed to the diverse career opportunities in agriculture, and build linkages with potential partners and networks in the sector. Finally, Honorable President, we should encourage our parliaments to mainstream youth and agriculture in our national youth parliaments as a platform for youth to engage in discussions on agriculture, share experiences, learn about agricultural support programs, explore career opportunities in agriculture, and foster connections with relevant partners and networks. That is the spirit, building a better tomorrow. I present this, Honorable President. I thank you. Nakensa Inko.
Thank you very much, South Africa. I will now call on the head of delegation of Zambia for his presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to share Zambia's experiences concerning the modernization of agriculture as a way of addressing food insecurity and youth unemployment. Mr. President, allow me from the onset to state that generally achieving food security in its totality continues to be a challenge for developing countries. This is because there are a number of underlying structural challenges that hamper the attainment of food security. The challenges include an underdeveloped agricultural sector, scarcity of farming inputs, barriers to market, low investment in mechanization of agriculture, disease and infection of crops, inadequate agricultural policies, climate change, resource constraints, and low private sector participation in agriculture, among others. Mr. President, modernizing agriculture is essential for enhancing food security and nutrition, which is in line with Sustainable Development Goal number 1, which calls for an end to poverty in all its manifestations by 2030. To modernize the agricultural sector, SADC member states need to invest in irrigation systems and other necessary infrastructure, formulate adequate farming policies, and ensure that there is diversification of farming. I should hasten to say I was particularly impressed to hear from the speech of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture for Tanzania for the positive strides that Tanzania is making in increasing the total hectareage that is supported by irrigation systems. Well done, and we are wishing you the best for the ambitious program that you have. Mr. President, with rising youth unemployment, the agriculture sector presents a huge opportunity for creation of employment. My speaker from Zambia says the youth that are unemployed can be used as a resource, and that can create employment to them. The following are some of the strategies we, the SADC members, can embrace to attract the youth in the agriculture sector. Make it easy for the youth to access land and finances, enhance the use of technology in farming, promote farming as a business to attract young people and increase women's participation in agribusiness, and brand and package agriculture for a younger audience. Mr. President, Zambia has made significant progress in improving the policy environment in the agricultural sector. However, the agricultural sector has not been operating optimally due to some challenges. Hence, even though Zambia is relatively able to produce enough staple food to feed its population, the country has been facing short-term food insecurity issues. To address this, the government has made some commitments to improve food security. These include transforming Farmer Input Support Program FISIP into comprehensive agriculture support program, promoting investment in agricultural research and product support, promotion of investment in farm block development in all the provinces of Zambia, investment in agricultural extension system, investment in rural and peri-urban infrastructure, as well as promote agricultural growth through marketing and trading of designated agriculture commodities. The Food and Nutrition Act number 3 of 2020. This act provides for the implementation of national food and nutritional programs. This law also facilitates for the monitoring of food availability and the nutritional value of food. The Food Safety Act number 7 of 2019. This act provides for, among other things, the protection of the public against health hazards and fraud in the manufacture, sale, and use of food. And the Dairy Industry Development Act number 22 of 2010, which provides for the regulation of the dairy industry so as to develop an efficient and self-sustaining dairy industry. Mr. President, the other parliamentary measures include the establishment of parliamentary committees for enhanced oversight, such as Committee on Agriculture, Lands and Natural Resources. However, due to the complexities of the food security and the multifaceted factors that are at play in safeguarding food security, other committees, including the Committee on Legal Affairs, Human Rights and Governance, Committee on Energy, Water Development and Tourism, Committee on Health, Community Development and Social Services, and Committee on National Security and Foreign Affairs, also interrogate issues pertaining to ensuring food security. And lastly, Mr. President, the establishment of parliamentary caucuses, such as the Zambia Youth Parliamentary Caucus, the Parliamentary Caucus on Food and Nutrition, the Zambia Parliamentary Alliance on Food Security and Nutrition. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you, Zambia. I will now call on the head of delegation of Zimbabwe to address.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I deliver, I want to disabuse of the young parliamentarian from South Africa who seemed to insinuate that some of us who take the podium without delegating to the younger ones are dictators. We believe sometimes in democratic dictatorship. When you read instructions from the president of SADC, that instruction is very clear. It says the speakers and the heads of delegations shall deliver. So please don't talk about failure to delegate. Anyway, in my parliament, I have 4 deputies, and one of them is a young lady, deputy speaker. Be that as it may, Mr. President, I want to recognize our host speaker, Right Honorable Dr. Tulia Ackson, fellow speakers and your delegations, Secretary General, Madame Boema, ladies and gentlemen. From the onset, allow me to tender my delegation's gratitude and indeed my own for the invitation to attend this august 53rd SADC Parliamentary Forum Assembly. Thank you also to Right Honorable Dr. Ackson, the host speaker, for your Parliament's gracious and boundless hospitality. She didn't hear that. Clap some more. Eh? Yeah, that's better. That's better. Zimbabwe knows how daunting the responsibility to be the host after Zimbabwe twice successfully hosted the Assembly and will do so in the near future. Congratulations to the United Republic Tanzanian Parliament and through it to our guest of honor in her absence, Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, which was founded by the illustrious and the iconic Africa continental freedom fighter, Mzee Julius Kambarame Nyerere. Mr. President, lest we forget, and you'll forgive me to go into a bit of history in this one. Mzee Nyerere was one of the luminary founding fathers of the Organization of the African Unity, now African Union, together with selfless visionary leaders such as Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Leopold Senghor, Joshua Nkomo, and the boisterous Kwame Nkrumah. Need I not remind you that it was Mzee Nyerere and the Tanzanian people who bore the brunt of the Southern Africa Liberation War by housing the Liberation Committee here in Tanzania under the aegis of the frontline states. We can't forget that, some of us, when we are on this soil. Today, Mzee Nyerere, Kaunda, and Seretse Khama must be smiling in their graves, seeing us here, congregated under the banner of SADC PF, soon to be a regional parliament, as an organ of SADC. That is why some of us experience political tearful eyes and nostalgic memories of our liberation struggle each time we step on the Tanzanian soil, especially here in Arusha. May the Roman Catholic Church hasten to canonize Mwalimu Nyerere as a lay Catholic saint, a consummated human being with a golden heart of humanity, Ubuntu personified. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Mr. President, the 53rd SADC PF Assembly's theme of modernizing agriculture to address food insecurity and youth unemployment in the SADC region, the role of parliaments, is ingenious and pertinent in our current social, economic, agricultural ecosystem among SADC countries. The irony and the bane of Africa is that despite the continent boasting of 65% of arable land, as the Honorable Minister did indicate earlier on, its agriculture sector remains dwarfed. Why? Our agriculture sector lacks modernization and mechanization in Africa in general, and in the SADC region in particular. It is imperative, therefore, that SADC region speedily embraces the smart agriculture ecosystem. The region should urgently enter the data agricultural revolution. To that end, Osman Badian was quoted by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture here, who is the executive chairman of Academica 2063 in Kigali, opines as follows, and this is what he says: from automated tractors and temperature and moisture sensors, all the way to aerial imaginary and drones, farmers in most advanced agricultural systems are in an increasingly digital world, with a range of vital data available just at the touch of a button. Yet, despite increasing threats such as climate change and the spread of new pests and diseases, farmers in Africa continue to have limited access to data, unquote. Mr. President, in Zimbabwe, we have mechanized. 24% of our agriculture activity contributes to gross domestic product, employment creation, food security and poverty eradication, export earnings, and industrial development through agro-industries. We have increased our irrigation facilities, and our aim is to have 2 million hectares of land under irrigation by 2030. Now, just a secret, government alone cannot succeed in driving the agricultural revolution. We need to engage the private sector to be involved. That's what we are doing in Zimbabwe. And furthermore, when it comes to extension services, like the Honorable Minister of Agriculture here said, our extension officers are fully equipped in terms of transport and tablets so that they can be in touch with the farmers.
Honorable Speaker, I have to ask you to conclude, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. I seek your small indulgence. As far as the commitment of youth is concerned, we have given them land. We have established a youth empowerment bank to assist them to be involved in agriculture. And furthermore, we have engaged them in contract farming so that they are not left alone. Now, what is the role of Parliament? The role of Parliament is very phenomenal. In Zimbabwe, we amended the Constitution so that Zimbabwean government was allowed to expropriate land. And that land must belong to the people as a fundamental human right. For that, Zimbabwe has been punished through sanctions for the past 23 years.
Honorable Speaker, please conclude.
Yes, I'm finishing. But I want to report to you, our agricultural production has grown phenomenal. We are now sufficient in maize production. We no longer import wheat from Ukraine and Russia. And also, we believe that in the near future, we should be the breadbasket of Southern Africa once more. Asante sana, muito obrigado, merci beaucoup, ngiyabonga. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zimbabwe. Honorable delegates, because of the impending arrival of Her Excellency the President, we have to conclude the proceedings of the symposium now. And I will just ask the Honorable Speaker from Tanzania to just give a brief closing remarks. Honorable Speaker.
Mr. President, thanks for the opportunity. I would like, in the shortest time possible, to thank the Minister for the presentation that he just made on behalf of the government of Tanzania. But I also recognize the presence of other ministers and deputy ministers in the House. And all of you, you're all welcome to this very important conference, and we appreciate your coming. Now, because I don't have much time to say, but I would like to just say one thing. We have listened to the presentation, which has given us the processes that Tanzania has taken, but also the developments that are impending. We have listened to also the heads of delegations and the representatives of various countries in our SADC region. I think it's time we have to stop blaming other regions or other people for our own wrongdoings. Why am I saying that? It's because we have grown. We have grown. You know, some of our countries have gone beyond 60 years of independence. At 60, a person is already retiring. And the average life expectancy in SADC is 60. So you can't spend a whole lifetime you're still complaining. We have to reach a point where SADC has to be self-sufficient in all areas. And today, if I had time, I would speak about what happened in Malawi when we were discussing about self-sufficiency in energy. And we were talking about clean energy and the use of dirty energy as we look forward to clean energy. And so now we are discussing about agriculture. And we have to reach a point where, as we have just learned from Zimbabwe and the strides they are making, we should learn from each other. Who is best in which area? Let's complement each other instead of complaining, but instead of competing against each other. Let's compete with the world and let's live as brothers and sisters in our SADC. Mr. President, because there will be more opportunities later to speak, I'll end there. Thank you so much, and we all look forward to listening to Her Excellency. She's on her way here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The symposium is concluded. We will rise.